The Minor Details, episode 4 with Pete Pitts. Pete, we're in episode 4 already, and they're in for a big show today. We're doing the Scott Pederson's case. And in about 15 minutes, we're going to get into it for 45 straight minutes. Is Scott Pederson guilty or innocent? Because not guilty or innocent, because there's a difference. There's a difference between not guilty and innocent. I think he's not guilty and people are going to get pissed at me. But that doesn't mean, Pete, that he's innocent. What's up, Pete? How was your week?
Oh, man. Hey, it's great to be here as always. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in once again to the Minor Details. It's been an amazing week for me. There's definitely been lots of ups and downs. There's been news. We'll talk about some news very shortly. But just to elaborate real quick on this case before we jump into it, this is one of the most complex rabbit hole cases I've ever looked into. I see some comments already. Mick Blue in the house. Hey, welcome, Mick Blue. Welcome, everyone. As we dive into this case in a little while, we're going to talk about everything from the evidence to the lack of evidence to the trial to what's next and what's happening right now. But man, I had a great week this week, brother. I know you've had some ups and downs. Did I hear a rumor that you were maybe at the casinos this week?
Listen, I went to the casinos and played poker last night at the Venetian. And let me tell you something, to all the rich guys that were at my poker table last night, I kicked your ass, buddy. I kicked your ass in poker. I left her with 500 big ones, Pete. And the rich guys didn't realize what hit them. I'm from Northeast Pennsylvania. I can play poker. I can play poker.
Absolutely, bro. Absolutely.
Hey, listen, it's fun winning poker. It's not fun when you lose.
Yeah. True. That's true. I've definitely lost more than I've won, but I always have fun playing.
Yes, for sure.
Absolutely. So
we got Calgary in the house on Instagram. So we got Calgary in the house.
What's up? Welcome, everyone.
And I saw we're getting a lot of downloads on Spotify from Canada, too. So thank you to our Canada followers. We appreciate it. Please subscribe. We're on everywhere. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We're on anywhere you get your podcast. But, Pete, let me tell you real quick about my week. Okay? I didn't have that great of a week on TikTok. I only gained 2,400 new followers. So it's not 10,000 like last week. And I didn't have any million videos, but I still love doing it. It's a great thing. It's awesome.
Hey, 2,400 is not too bad. You're making progress. You're making it happen. And that's, brother.
So what'd you do this week, Pete? Anything good?
So this week I was actually among working on some projects that I can't talk about currently, working on some music also. I actually was downtown Broadway in Nashville, and I happened to be by the river, just casually looking up, and who do I see but Jelly Roll walking into his bar, Goodnight Nashville.
You saw Jelly Roll in Nashville?
Yes, my former collaborative artist, my fellow Tennessee brother Jelly Roll. I just looked up, and there he was. I said, "Oh,
that's awesome, man!"
And I try to go talk to him. Being that a lot of the viewers and listeners might not know, but I have known Jelly Roll since 2009. I met him and started working with him in music in small town Tennessee, and I actually have an album with him called Motivation Is My Hustle. So we dropped the album before he was famous. We recorded before he was famous. Now that he is famous and he has a bar, it was amazing, Danny, seeing him walk up with 8 security guards, just storm into the room. And of course, he was doing a production for CMT for the rodeo, so he couldn't really talk. He was working. He was on the clock. But, you know, I get it. I'm at work a lot too, so I know how it is. But Danny, imagine walking into your own building, your $20 million building, with about 8 security guards deep. Imagine how that feels.
That's going to be us, Pete. That's going to be us. They're going to be like, here comes the Minor Details. And here comes Pete and Danny. And we're going to have bodyguards. And you know what? That brings up a point. I was recognized this week, Pete.
Absolutely. Yes.
I was recognized this week.
Oh, you were?
Yes.
Oh, tell us all about it.
All right. I was at the comedy show downtown. You know that comedy show you like to go to? It's by Pawn Stars. So I'm sitting there, and this big muscle dude comes in. He looks like a scrapper. He got the cauliflower ears, so you know he's a wrestler or he's something, or he's some kind of fighter, Pete, right?
Okay.
And the guy's looking at me, and he's like staring at me, and I'm thinking, I don't want to fight this dude. Hopefully he didn't watch my videos and I pissed him off or something, but this dude is staring at me.
Wow.
Finally, he comes up to me and he says to me, have I seen you in this place before, this comedy show? I said, yeah, I was here a couple of times. He goes, man, I think I know you from somewhere. And at the moment it hit him. And he's like, I know you from TikTok. You have a podcast And yeah, and you do true crime. I'm like, yes. He goes, that's where I know you from. So I did get recognized this week, which was great. It was awesome.
Beautiful. Did you sign an autograph?
I didn't. We got a photo. We took a photo. We took a photo.
Fan photo.
And this guy actually is a UFC fighter. He was a MMA fighter. And guys, you're gonna laugh. I looked at him and said, "Well, I'm surely not gonna fight you." And he said to me, "You might want to. I wasn't really good. My record was 7-12. You might beat me." He said. He said, "You got a shot to beat me. I was only 7-12."
So is this going to go down? Are we going to see the
No, I think my fighting days are over. But wrestling, Pete.
Okay, wrestling only. Okay.
We'll still do wrestling.
Do you ever want to go back to those fighting days and let us all know about those days, or is that kind of in the past?
That's probably the wrestling. That's probably in the past. The fighting days for me. Like you know what? I still think I could fight, but I'd probably get my ass kicked. Do you know what I mean? And listen, I'm still a smart ass, Pete. And I don't have nothing to back it up anymore. So I got to calm the smart ass shit down. You know what I mean?
Hey, as people say, what do people say on social media? They say you're loud. They say,
yes.
They say you yell. But you're just a passionate guy. That's what I think.
That's all. All right, guys. Do you want to get into this? You got anything else today, Pete?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we should just briefly talk about our weekly spotlight, which I wanted to mention the passing away and the mysterious loss of Hollywood legend Gene Hackman at 95 years old.
That was crazy. Crazy. And his wife was in her 60s, right? Early 60s.
Yes, she was about 65, and their dog were all three found unalive in their Santa Fe, New Mexico home. Very suspicious. No COD has been determined yet, and no apparent COD was observed at the scene.
I know, Pete. I did a video on it this morning. Like, the dog being unalived is very weird. Like he said, the dog too fishy.
Very.
Right. How does the dog die? I mean, this is shocking to me. And listen, this man was 95 years old, and I'm thinking his wife was in her early 60s, 63. I'm thinking somewhere around there. You got to realize, folks, I mean, even though, yes, she's in her 60s, people just don't die. You know what I mean? They just don't die in their 60s and 50s. Something happened. You know, definitely, something's definitely up with that.
Yeah, without a doubt. My heart goes out to them. You know, rest in peace. Gene Hackman, of course, Oscar Award winner, one of the legends. He got his 2 Oscars in The French Connection and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, if I'm not mistaken. But he's just such an amazing, prolific actor. Every role you see Gene Hackman in, he sells it. He sold it, you know?
Yes.
So, rest in peace to him. And I do want to know more. I do hope we discover more, obviously, so far about the cause of why he was found unalive, as well as his wife and his dog. I did hear there were 2 other dogs that were found alive.
Yes.
Was also interesting news. There is no carbon monoxide or gas causes yet that have been determined. And I just double checked, Danny, his wife was 65, in fact. So 65 years old. And yes, found mysteriously unalived in New Mexico. So our hearts go out to them. And as we learn more about this case, we definitely need to bring it to our viewers and our listeners out here.
Okay, and Pete, we got a call. You're originally from Tennessee, right? Or is that where they filmed The Walking Dead, right? We got White Dove here saying on Instagram, I'm from Tennessee. So you got a Tennessee fan here.
Nice. Much love to Tennessee. I'm not on Instagram, Danny, because I'm trying to keep up on Facebook and YouTube as well. So shout out to all of our Instagrammers. Shout out to everyone out there on all platforms. And shout out to our future Spotify and Apple Podcast listeners.
Yes. All right. You ready to get into this?
Oh, man. I don't know if I'll ever be ready, because this case, Danny, I'll tell you what. You know how they say an artist leaves a little bit of themselves in every painting or a rising star? Don't we leave ourselves, a little bit of ourselves, in these cases as we're studying them? I know you know more than most.
Listen, this case, honestly, Pete, this case has intrigued me forever since it happened. Pete, I'm not a big book reader. Okay? I watch TV, I watch documentaries, I'll listen to podcasts, but Danny Miner and reading is not a big thing. But I'm going to tell you this. I read at least 4 books on this case. I read his sister's book, I read his girlfriend's book, and this case is crazy, Pete. And like I said in the beginning, there's a difference between not guilty and innocent. Okay? I'm not saying he's innocent at all, but I'm saying he should have been found not guilty because there wasn't enough evidence to convict him. Basically, they told the jury, this guy cheated on his wife. He's a horrible person. Convict him for murder. And that's what they did. There's no evidence. There's no crime scene. People don't even realize that there's no crime scene, Pete. There's nowhere they could say she died in the kitchen, died in the living room, died in the garage. There's no crime scene.
That's true. They have never discovered the crime scene where this transpired. And Danny, something you just touched on, if you could let the viewers know out there, what do you mean by innocent versus not guilty more specifically? How do you define not guilty? Because that's an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah, and you know what? I got yelled at by one of our listeners that I didn't read the case because some people might not know the case. So let me just really brief you the case, and then I'm going to tell you what I mean.
Absolutely.
Lacey Pederson, okay? She was born in May 4th, 1975. But on Christmas Eve, she was murdered, folks. On Christmas Eve, she was found unalive. No, I'm sorry. She was missing on Christmas Eve. Then she was found unalive 4 months later in the same place where her husband was fishing on Christmas Eve. I'm going to repeat that. Where her husband was fishing on Christmas Eve, the day she went missing, she was found and her unborn baby was found also 4 months later. And now you're going to say to me, Danny, how could you say this man's not guilty? And I'm going to explain. Pete, there's a difference between innocent and not guilty. Scott Pederson is not innocent, but he is not guilty with the evidence that was presented. Pete, there's 2 types of evidence, okay? There's we got balloons.
Balloons.
I don't know how that happened. That was great. We got circumstantial evidence. Circumstantial evidence is he has a girlfriend, he's been cheating on his wife, and she's found dead. That's circumstantial evidence, okay? Talking to this girlfriend, having this girlfriend, it's not enough evidence. It's not hard evidence. It's not concrete evidence to convict somebody, okay? Just because he had a girlfriend doesn't mean he killed his wife. So that's what circumstantial evidence is. Okay, there's all kind of different things. Why did he go fishing? She was found in the same place he went fishing. Believe it or not, that's just circumstantial evidence. That does not prove he committed murder. And there's no hard evidence to prove he killed her. There's no DNA, there's no fingerprints, there's no nothing. Basically, he's a shitty guy for cheating on his wife, and he's convicted.
You know, I agree with you. Thank you for laying out the case. And again, for our viewers out there, that was 2002 when she went. That was 2003 when she was discovered off the coast of California. And I think that for me personally, Danny, as I was diving into this case, it brought a big question in my mind. And that question was, is being suspicious enough to be convicted of a crime? Is being a cold or unemotional person enough to be convicted of a crime? And was Scott Pederson guilty of those things? Did Scott Pederson have an affair? Well, he admitted to doing so. However, is that enough to convict him of this heinous act of the unalivement of his wife and their unborn son?
Right. So, and Pete, here's another thing that I think is very interesting. Like when I talk about him being not guilty, people will bring this up to me. They'll say to me, he had money. He dyed his hair blonde. He was trying to escape to Mexico. This, and that. That is not true. If you watch the recent documentary, he was in San Diego. He was going to go play golf with his father and I think his friend. And he wore it as a disguise because the press wouldn't leave him alone. He dyed his hair to try to live a normal life. So he was not down there escaping to Mexico like everybody said. Okay, is it weird that he dyed his hair, that he had money on him? Of course it's weird. Okay, but again, that is not enough to convict somebody. That could help convict somebody. Here, let me explain it this way, Pete. This will explain it. If you get DNA, that's hard evidence. So there's DNA with his blood on hers or whatever, right? That's solid evidence that he killed her, right?
Absolutely.
And then you add the circumstantial. He's having an affair. He's wearing a disguise. He did that. Then it all fits. But you can't convict somebody on circumstantial evidence alone. And that's what we have in this case. hundreds of pieces of circumstantial evidence, no hard evidence, the jury shouldn't have convicted him. And I know people aren't going to like to hear that, but I believe the future Scott Pederson will be getting a new trial.
Well, Danny, you know, it's kind of ironic because I don't know if a lot of the viewers know, but we don't go over everything about these cases in depth before we start the show. We do have our pre-production meetings and our screen tests. We talk about the show throughout the week, but I actually did not know that you were going to be defending that perspective, because I kind of feel the same way. I feel like there's a real lack of evidence in this case, and I thought we were going to be good cop versus bad cop on this episode. So that's funny, because I kind of tend to agree with you, man.
Listen, and here's the thing, Pete, you know, and a lot of people are like, come on, he's guilty. I agree. The man is probably 99.9% guilty. Like, who the fuck goes fishing on Christmas Eve? Right? Who goes fishing when your wife's pregnant? Right? That's suspicious right away. But again, suspicion is not solid evidence. Suspicion is circumstantial evidence that helps the solid evidence. And what we have is a lot of suspicion evidence, but no solid evidence that the guy committed the crime.
Yeah, you're right, Danny. And I was doing my own rabbit hole search of this case. I actually watched the Dean Cain movie, A Perfect Husband, I believe, on Tubi. And of course, I watched all kinds of interviews, including with Scott himself, and what he said in his own words about why he went fishing that morning. He said, our relationship was set up to that point where we just agreed that we would do that type of stuff. I did my own leisure activities, such as golf or fishing. However, on Christmas Eve, the reporter had asked him, why did you leave your 8-month-old pregnant wife at home alone on Christmas Eve? And he said, well, this is how our relationship was set up. I went out to do leisurely activities. She was fine. She was baking. She didn't need me to be there. That's what he said.
Right. But Pete, I mean, I think we both know that, like, could you imagine like telling your wife on Christmas Eve, hey, honey, I know it's Christmas Eve, but you know, I'm going to go catch some fucking bass. You know, I'm going to go catch some trout. Right? I mean, I don't, that excuse is horrible. Okay. But again, it's circumstantial. It's not enough to convict it. And guys, this will help you understand circumstantial. Circumstantial helps the case, but it doesn't convict, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. And he was convicted because of essentially the opinions of 12 people, correct? The jury are the reason that he is now at San Quentin, or if he's been transferred somewhere else, they're the reason that he has now been serving this sentence. And you or me, Danny, could have been on that juror pool if our situation environment was different, if we were in that time and place. So that's a lot of responsibility. I've never served on a jury, Danny. I don't know if you have, but
I never will, because I was a cop.
Okay.
You know, they'll never pick me. But but here's the thing, Pete. You know, I remember when this case first happened.
Yeah.
I was shocked when the jury came back and found him guilty. Like, I told everybody in my family, I said, there is nothing here to prove this man did this. Do I think he's guilty? Yeah. So when the not guilty came out, when the guilty came out, I was in shock. Honestly, I was in shock that this guy was found guilty, because, guys, think about this. They convicted this man without a crime scene.
Yes.
There was no crime scene. They have no idea where this crime happened. There's no blood anywhere. There's no nothing.
There's no murder.
How did this man kill her?
Absolutely. There's no murder weapon. There's no evidence that's completely tying them. So let's talk about the evidence that they do have, Danny. Let's talk about any and all evidence that was brought forth in this case, starting with, for example, there was a strand of hair of hers found in his possession on his truck, or in his truck, correct?
Right. I think the strand of hair was found, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, our followers out there, but I think it was on like a pair of pliers. Yes. It was like a pair of pliers, that like fishing pliers that you would take a hook out of a fish's mouth or something.
Right. Okay. So let's talk about that evidence.
Okay. Here's my thing of this, Pete. My thing is, she could have been in his boat. She lived with him. That hair could have been anywhere. Mm-hmm. That hair could, and I know people are going to say, oh, come on, Danny. Well, what was he using pliers for, to pluck her hair out? No, he wasn't doing that. So that hair could have got there from anywhere. And that's what I would tell the jury. So there was a hair on pliers that are used to take a hook out of fish.
Yeah.
What did he use this for? To pluck her hair out? No. She went fishing with him before, and there was a piece of hair on the pliers. That's how he would explain that. To me, again, that's not hard evidence.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is a piece of evidence just showing, I guess, that yes, they existed together, but they cohabited. They were married for 5 years. So of course it stands to reason that some of her hair is going to rub off on him, fall off on him. That to me is just very, very weak. So that was the first piece of evidence that was physical in this case at all. And then
Yes.
witness evidence as well, right? Or do we call witness testimony evidence? What do we call that?
Well, it's just witness. It's
Just
what
witness.
they just call witness testimony. That's it. It's, to me, it helps. Witness testimony is going to convict people all the time,
Right.
but you got to realize people see things differently.
True.
Like me and you could be at the same scene of something, Pete. You could see it a little more different than me. And let me explain. As a detective, like say me and you witnessed the crime, both of us, okay? And I showed up on scene. I would separate me and you and interview us separately because you can convince me that I seen something I didn't. And I can convince you that you seen something that you didn't. Me and you are going to see things a little bit different. We're not going to see it exactly the way it was. So one thing about being a detective, you always separated witnesses. Always.
I see. I see. So witness testimony alone, you're saying, is highly conjecture and guesswork on who's remembering what or who's even telling the truth. Again, it's
Yes.
testimony, and testimony is simply words brought forth by someone in asserting something. Who knows if that's a lie or not? Even polygraph tests don't conclude that factually or not. So we don't know that, right?
Yeah. Oh, exactly. And here's the thing about polygraph tests too. Polygraph tests are not accepted in the court system. So
Right.
why do them? Listen, I used it as a detective, but I'm going to be honest with you guys. I don't believe in them. I don't. I think if you believe in polygraph tests, you believe in ghost boxes. Okay? I swear to God, what it's used for, it's a tool to get people to confess. I put Pete on that lie detector test, and I say, Pete, what the fuck here? It's saying you're lying. And then Pete gets all nervous.
Yeah.
Okay? So it's used as a tool to get a confession. Because if it was so great, it would be allowed in court. But
Mm,
it's not allowed in court. So to me, if I was a defense attorney, my client would never take that test. Ever. Ever.
wow. And the reason it's not allowed in court is because they are highly false sometimes, correct?
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
So, it's not admissible for a reason. That makes sense. But
Have you
anyway,
ever taken one, Pete?
I've never taken a polygraph. I guess you'll have to give me the first one along with our ghost box test when we do our investigation series.
I've taken two.
Okay. How did you pass?
Yeah, 'cause you had to take them to be a cop.
Okay. Okay.
So they gave us them for to be a cop. They go through all the questions, this and that. And then I actually had a security guard job before I was a cop. And it was such a high profile security job. They gave us a polygraph test before they hired us for that.
Really?
Yeah. So I've taken two polygraph tests. I guess I passed. I'm a truth teller. I'm a
Okay.
truth teller.
You did not. I wonder, Danny, if you had tried to lie, could you have made the machine think that you were telling the truth?
I don't know. I just don't believe them. And then, Pete, not only that, they have voice analysis stress things. They can tell by how your voice sounds if you're telling the truth or not. That's a crock of shit to me. I'm telling you, watch a UFO documentary, same thing.
Yeah, I see a lot of very fascinating to me. It's more entertainment. I don't think that most of it falls under the realm of science. But hey, science is branching off into more and more tangents every day, right?
Yeah. So listen, Pete, we talked about zero evidence
Zero
for the
evidence.
prosecution other than saying Scott's a shitty guy who cheated on his wife and he
Yes.
deserves to be found guilty.
Yes.
Let's talk about all the evidence for the defense and a retrial. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely, Danny. And I think there might be quite a bit. I'm honestly a little bit surprised that it's taken 20 years for this new talk of a retrial to even arise because as I'm discovering more and more and learning more and more, it seems like his defense attorney was sleeping or something. I don't know what was happening, but it definitely seems to get the defense that he should have gotten.
I totally agree. And I believe his attorney wasn't his attorney. God, what's his name? I can't think of his attorney's name. But he's a big high profile attorney. I just can't think of his name right now. But like he got like a high profile attorney on this and
He was, yeah.
still
Yeah.
lost. You know what I mean? I can't think of his Garagos, I believe it is. Wasn't his attorney Garagos? I think it was.
Yeah, I can look it up.
Yeah, look it up while we're talking. I think
Yeah,
it was Garagos.
that's correct. Mark Garagos.
Mark Garagos. And listen, here's the thing. Like, Mark Garagos became famous because of this case. Like,
Yes.
he's on CNN. He's everywhere because of this case. And he lost. Like,
And
people are like, oh my God, Mark Garagos. He got Mark Garagos. Who cares? He lost. He lost Scott Peterson's case with zero evidence.
listen,
I could have defended Scott Peterson better. And he
absolutely.
probably paid this guy $2 million to do it.
There's no telling, Danny. When I am wanting a lawyer, I want to be defended. I want to win the case. I don't care about a name. I don't care about your celebrity status. So to me, that this guy Garagos definitely dropped the ball for sure, without a doubt.
You know what Garagos does? And listen, I've dealt with defense attorneys my whole life. They scream and yell and put on a show. So you're looking at them, but you don't see the evidence. So Garagos is one of these guys, oh, look at this. Look what the cops did, blah, blah, blah. Because he doesn't want you to look over there where the evidence is. He wants you to look at him. All the intention on Mr. Garagos. But the fact is, Mr. Garagos, you lost a wiffle ball case. This was a wiffle ball case that the guy should have been found not guilty. So
Yeah.
I don't know why you're on celebrity status attorney, because to me, you're not that good of an attorney. I said what I said.
No.
I said what I said.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of reasons that reopening the case or having a new trial might actually come to fruition. So let's just talk about really quick the condition in which both Lacey and baby Connor were found. So they were both greatly decomposed after quite a long time in the water, and they were both missing a lot of their body. Well, particularly Lacey. And so
Yes.
it's very interesting just to note, if this did happen, if Scott did do this on the date in question on Christmas Eve, then, what was his method? There's lots of accusations about him buying cement and using it for anchors. They did not discover what they guessed were 4 out of 5 anchors that he made. So they guessed that maybe 4 anchors are somewhere out there in the bay that had tried to weigh the bodies down unsuccessfully. So, but we'll talk about that at some point. But to me, as we get into the state and condition of the bodies, that is very interesting, because that almost, I don't want to say that lends to exonerating him, but it brings up more questions to me.
Right. And let me tell you something, guys. I don't want to get graphic here, but
Yeah.
being a cop, I saw a lot of dead bodies. I mean, it's just a fact. Probably 500 dead bodies in my career, right?
Yeah.
Drowning does so much to a body, Pete. It's unbelievable. And I don't want to sound graphic here, but we had a guy missing for 3 weeks, and then we found him. It doesn't even look like a person. Okay, the water makes you blow up. First you sink, then you float back up. So a body could really destroy. I mean, water could really destroy a body, is what I'm saying.
Wow.
Really bad.
So in addition to that, just the body being greatly disfigured from the water, it was also notable the medical examiner could not determine an official cause of death. So it was undeterminable. And also length of death, exact kind of time frame of death was also undeterminable. But they said they were missing great parts of her. They were missing the heart, the lungs, the head, and the limbs were all gone.
Right. You got to realize this, guys. Not only that, right? Not only that, but you have fish eating her. I hate to say this, but it's true, guys. It's a sick factor, but it's true. So now, Pete, you're telling me, right? The medical guy doesn't even know how she died. So we have no crime scene. We don't know how she died, but this man has been in jail for 20 some years.
Yeah, absolutely, Danny. And that brings me to just want to thank, well, first of all, the question the media asked immediately, they found the body. Well, how do you know it's Lacey? They could not do fingerprint analysis. They could not do dental results either. So because of them missing so much evidence, they had to use finally DNA testing to determine, yes, in fact, it was her. Okay, so all we know now is that she's no longer alive. That's what we know conclusively, right?
Right.
We know that, I mean, we can pretty much guess that that she was a victim, that she did not do this to herself.
Oh yeah, without a doubt, she was murdered.
So,
but the question is, and we're going to get into this in the next half hour, Pete.
yeah,
Is there other suspects that might have killed Lacey? Yes. There's multiple things out there that Lacey might be missing because of. Multiple.
Yes, absolutely. And I want to just point out to one thing. As I've been reading comments throughout the videos that I'm watching about Scott and about this case, I am seeing just a massive, overwhelming amount of, I guess, kind of just either hatred towards Scott or just kind of case closed mentality. He's in prison. I hope he rots in prison forever type thing. And I would tend to agree if I knew for sure that he was the person who committed these crimes. I don't know that for sure. So for me, I just think, well, I know our system has been wrong before. I know our system has made errors before. We've falsely imprisoned people before. So is it possible? And I, as an investigator, Danny, I want to get to the truth. So like you said, yes, there are other suspects. There were other suspicious things at play. And a lot of it was ignored by the Modesto Police Department, was it not?
Yes. And Pete, I want to get back to that too. You are so right. As a detective and a cop, I'm going to tell you this. Cops get tunnel vision.
Mm-hmm.
Because let's admit, like we just got new shirts and new hats in our merchandise, Pete.
Yeah.
It's always the husband. The husband did it. And 99% of the time, that's true.
Absolutely.
You know the person that murdered you. All the time. 99% of the time, the person that was murdered knows who murdered them. That's a fact, guys. So the police always go to a scene thinking it's the spouse. They do, or a family member. So until they clear him, but sometimes cops will just stay on that and will look anywhere else, Pete. They get tunnel vision.
Yeah, that was one of the things that was asked to one of the lead detectives at the beginning of the case as I was watching. They said, is Scott Pederson a suspect? And the detective said, no, not at this time. This was shortly after her disappearance, before she'd been found. And then they said, well, has he been cleared? And of course they said, no, he's not been cleared yet. So in their mind, they're saying one thing, no, he's not a suspect. But as soon as they walk back into their office, I'm sure it's probably the other way around. Like, no, he's probably our best guy right now. Right?
Oh, yes, without a doubt. And that's what they did. They just focused on him and didn't look anywhere else. And Pete, we might as well get into it. We got 28 minutes left. There was a burglary across the street, right, Pete?
Right across the street, same neighborhood, Danny. And as I was investigating, there were actually multiple felony burglaries and crimes that had taken place in that surrounding area in the recent times.
Right.
So right in their neighborhood, a burglary took place.
Yes, a burglary right across the street, folks.
Yes.
Did she go to, and guys, she took the dog for a walk. We didn't mention this. Her dog was found roaming around her yard because she went to take her dog for a walk. The neighbor found the dog and put the dog back in the yard. So we know for a fact that that dog was outside by himself. So now we know for a fact that Lacey probably did take that dog, right? How is the dog outside?
How is the dog outside? The neighbor named Karen claims to have put the dog back into the fence around 10:18 a.m. And then later on, Danny, around 10:45, the mailman named Russell, he claims he signed a sworn affidavit claiming that he always heard Mackenzie, the dog, bark. But when he was delivering mail that day, at that time, he saw the gate open and he did not hear dog barking. So very suspicious.
Yeah, and listen, if you're a mailman and you do the same thing every day, you know what dog barks at you, who's home, when they're home, when they go to work. It's just human nature. If you're doing it for years, you're going to know the people you deliver the mail to.
Yeah.
So if that mailman has nothing to say but the truth, is what I'm saying. He has no reason to lie. He has no reason to say that gate was open. So we gotta think to ourselves, Pete. She took that dog for a walk. She did.
Yeah.
And how come the dog is loose and she's not there, right?
Yeah, there's got to be a reason. That definitely needs an explanation. There were actually, and some of the witnesses talking about the dog again, some of the witnesses reported seeing Lacey walking the dog.
Yes. There was an old lady saw her.
Yes.
From her kitchen window.
Yes. Now, were these witnesses lying or being coerced, or did they have an agenda or a reason to lie? I don't know. But they reported seeing Lacey with the dog after Scott had already left for work that day.
Right.
Or had left that day.
Yes. So if Scott wasn't there, what did he kidnap her from the street? I
Yeah.
mean, if think about this. If you were a husband and you wanted to kill your wife, okay, just think of this, guys. You surely would kill her in your own house or you would kill her somewhere else. You wouldn't wait till she goes walks the dog and then
Yeah.
attack her. So that don't even make sense. And that's
No.
what I would do as a defense attorney. I would say, folks, this don't even make sense. And I'd put my head up like this, Pete. Come on.
Yeah, it really
He's
does.
going to go kill her while she walks the dog?
Yeah, it really doesn't make sense. A lot of things don't make sense. And back to him leaving Danny and going fishing, something that was reported that's also interesting is that he chose to go to a certain area off of Berkeley Marina, if I'm not mistaken, where the water was particularly shallow. He liked to fish in the shallow water. So, of course, that would not make any sense to take his wife, the victim of his crime, and drop her in shallow water. Of course, he wouldn't. Any intelligent criminal, unless he's the world's dumbest criminal, would not do that. Now, did he really go fishing? Did he really? At first, he said, "Oh, I think I went golfing," or "I went golfing." No, I went fishing. No matter what, Danny, he's doing something on Christmas Eve morning instead of being there with his wife. That's a little bit shady already, right? Maybe
I agree. And again, there's shady shit.
Very shady, very shady. Now, does that make him guilty of this? I still don't know, because again, yes, maybe he's a cold-hearted guy. Maybe he's an unemotionalist guy, and he obviously was a cheater. So maybe a lot of the hate that people are throwing at him, maybe he deserves a lot of it. I don't know, but I definitely cannot say beyond a shadow of a doubt that he is guilty of this.
And listen, here's another thing that we forgot to say. He had a girlfriend. His girlfriend's name was Amber Fry.
Yes.
Even when the wife was missing, she still did not know Pete.
Mm-hmm.
He called her and said he was in Paris.
Yeah.
He was lying to her saying he was in Paris. But
Yeah.
now listen, how many guys cheat on their wives and girlfriends? Tons. Doesn't mean they're convicted of murder. It doesn't mean they're a murderer.
Yeah.
That's just something, like I said, that's circumstantial evidence. That's nothing that can convict him.
That's true, Danny. And I think if we dove into his mind and tried to figure out like what's been going on in his mind, what he was trying to do, lying to his wife about his girlfriend, lying to his girlfriend about his wife and about everything else, like who knows, Danny. But again, on this specific case, did he do it or not? And my doubts are kind of up there now, because we're talking earlier about some other suspects, Danny, and we were talking about the burglary that transpired right across the street from the Pederson home. So imagine that scenario. That's obviously what some people have speculated. Imagine she's out there either with Mackenzie or without the dog. She's already gotten the dog out for a walk. She sees something happening. Could she not have easily been a victim of an abduction right there? Or maybe they witnessed her like as a witness, and they said, "Hey, we need to get rid of this witness." I don't know. Is that possible though?
I agree with you totally. And listen, if I'm a defense attorney, Pete, this is what I say. Folks, doesn't this make more sense? We already know the dog was outside running around by itself.
Yes.
We already know she had to take that dog for a walk. Now we find out, folks, there's a burglary next door. Did Lacey see them burglarize in that house and they had to take her out? That's what happened, folks. That's what went on here. That's what I would say.
Yeah, who knows? And that would be a great defense.
You can hire me as an attorney, guys. I'm good.
I do a much better job than Mark did in Scott's case.
But Pete, honestly, that's a real scenario that could have happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And Danny, there's so many things in this case that are just very fishy. Shout out to Avi real quick. I see Avi over there in LA right now, holding it down in California. And California is actually the state of this case that we're talking about today. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about the Scott Pederson case. He is still currently incarcerated, and his sentence has been changed from the death penalty to now life in prison. But there's hopes that he's going to get a new trial. Now, I'm not advocating for the guy completely, but I'm saying I think there's a lot of strangeness going on in this case, and there is not enough certainty to continue to convict him if there is another retrial, knowing what we know today.
I totally agree with you. 100%. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And Pete, we didn't even talk about, okay, so we talk about the burglary next door, right?
Yep.
We didn't even talk about that there was reports. Folks, wait to hear this. There was reports of a pregnant woman running out of a van and people grabbing her and putting her back in the van. Am I
Yeah.
right, Pete?
Yes, absolutely, Danny. And then that gets into
And
one.
two people seen that.
Yes,
Two people called the police and seen that.
yes, multiple people, multiple witnesses, very, very suspicious. And then if you want to talk about just another suspicious fact that I learned recently that took place in and around the area between 1999 and 2002, there were 7 different pregnant women that disappeared from that area. 3 lived in Modesto and 4 lived in the surrounding area within 80 miles of that California area. They were all pregnant, approximately 8 months pregnant. 2 of the victims were exactly 8 months pregnant when they disappeared. One of them, of course, being Lacey herself. The other one, a young lady named Evelyn Hernandez. Now, Evelyn Hernandez's body was also found washed up mysteriously on the California coast, also with no head, with no limbs. So, in a very similar methodology could have been used. And there was also a lot of speculation about a Satanist cult that could have been participating in this.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been anything, but think about that. You have all them women missing,
Yeah,
right?
women.
And you have one that's similar, just like what happened to her. I mean, Pete, there is how Mark Garagos. How did you not win this case? How are you some kind of famous attorney when you lost? I just don't get it. You lost.
That
I don't get it. I just don't get it. I mean, this is a case me and you could have won, Pete.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I would be out there bragging if I were him. I don't think I would be out there uh, boasting about anything after he lost his case.
And listen, here's another thing, guys, that I want to bring up is I don't know if you know this, Pete, but men are most likely to cheat on their wives when they're pregnant.
Yeah,
And it's a sick thing, but it's a fact. So it's a stat that, if I was the prosecution, I'd bring up. Most likely men, and the number one killer of pregnant women are men. It's the number one killer
yeah.
of pregnant women, men.
Obviously, Danny, a lot of the percentages and the statistics point to Scott. And so
Right.
I think that's one reason that the police so heavily pushed him and that the state prosecution pushed that narrative is because the percentages lean towards him. Usually it's the husband. Usually it's a man. Usually the men are cheating on the women when the women are pregnant. All these statistics point a accusatory finger at him. However, what is the final straw? What is the one piece of evidence? I'm curious, Danny, and maybe you can answer this. What's the biggest or strongest point? It may not be evidence, but the biggest point that made the jury decide to convict him. What do you think?
I think it's him cheating on his wife. I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I do. I mean, if your wife if your wife or girlfriend goes missing while you're cheating on her, you're fucked. You're going to jail, especially if there's 7 or 8 women on that jury. You are going to jail. And if you didn't do it, you're still going to jail.
Wow. Yeah. And you know what? As crazy as it is to say, I think you're probably right. And was he guilty of that? Yes, he admitted it. Amber Fry admitted it. Yes, he was guilty of an affair. But did he do this? I don't know. And so it is very unfortunate. I feel like that the narrative was already painted in the media before this case transpired. And just like, as we know, talking about the Koberger case, as we go to Boise later to report about that case, we know that the picture has been painted already strongly. So Scott's narrative was already painted before a lot of these jurors ever went to that courtroom.
Right. Exactly. And here's the other thing I want to tell you guys. Like, when I say there's no crime scene, cops probably did a search warrant on that house, Pete, and they take the pipes off the showers. They take the pipes off the sink, because if you're putting blood down that sink, you're trying to wash the crime scene, it's going to be in the pipes. So they even take the pipes. For them to find zero evidence in that house, it's so strange.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know where the crime scene is, but then, Pete, you got to go back and say, was the crime scene when she was walking the dog?
Was it? Yeah.
I mean, that's the only thing that makes sense.
Yeah. And so if that was the abduction scene, then where was the scene of her unalivement? So, Danny, I want to bring up another fact that was not really brought up in the case, but it's more recently been talked about. It's being talked about by the Los Angeles Innocence Project as they're trying to get this new trial going. And that's the fact that about 1 mile away from the Pederson home, there was a burnt out van found with a mattress that they allegedly say looked like a bloody mattress in a old burnt van. Why was
Right.
that investigated? Or even why was that DNA not tested? And why was that not investigated to any extent?
Exactly. And that's what they want. And listen, here, and Pete, you brought up a great point. The Innocent Project of Los Angeles has taken this case over. And
Yes.
Pete, I was not familiar with them until this case came up, but I researched them. They do not take a case unless they feel the man's not guilty.
Yeah.
Honestly, they don't. They don't just take any fly-by-night case. They make sure that they believe that the man could possibly not be not guilty before they take this case. Now think of this. If that DNA comes back and it's Lacey's, could you imagine this man spent 20 some years in jail?
Oh man. So what would that prove, Danny, as a former investigator and detective, as a former police officer? What can you explain to everyone? What would that prove without a shadow of a doubt? Or would it prove anything? It would prove that that was now the crime scene, correct?
That's the crime scene, and whoever was driving that van killed her.
So who is the driver of that van?
We don't know. And listen, and I just told everybody about 10 minutes ago, there was
Yes.
people that saw a pregnant woman run from a van and be put back in it.
Absolutely. And that was in Modesto, correct? In the same city.
Yes.
And that was the same.
It's it. McBlue said it proves he bought a van.
Hey, at the end of the day, maybe he did. If we find that van and we find the DNA evidence inside that mattress, and the registration is in Scott's name, okay, now it all makes sense. Now we see what happened. But until we do, I want to know personally. I want to know the truth.
Yeah, so do I. I mean, I think, Pete, within a year, this guy's going to get a retrial. I really do.
Looks like it. And I think the Innocence Project is probably right in at least prodding into this to see if a retrial's possible, because I wasn't really looking into this case that much when it transpired. I obviously heard about it, but I was more or less like rebelling against news and the media. I was like, I don't want to listen to that. So now that I'm researching this case, Danny, I'm finding so many things, so many discrepancies, so many contradictions, and just so much weirdness going on that I'm really kind of surprised that it's taken 2 decades for them to talk about a retrial now.
It's shocking to me because this case should have been tried long ago. But listen, and like I said, I just want to re-go over what I said about why I think he was found guilty.
Yeah.
My sisters, I gotta pick on my sisters. I have twin sisters. They hated this guy's guts. Okay, they hated his guts because he was cheating on his wife. He was this and that. And think about it, you get jury members that hear, oh, this guy cheated on his wife. He pretended he was in Paris. He told his girlfriend he wasn't married. He told his girlfriend his wife was dead.
Wow.
I
Yeah,
mean,
so
and think about that as a woman. You get a woman on a jury.
yeah.
You know what I mean? They're thinking this guy's as guilty as hell. He killed her because he wanted to go with the girlfriend.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably a great part of the reason why he was convicted, just because he said, those things came out. And again, that's sad if there's a real criminal out there that really did do this who is going free and has been free. That's where it's sad. And am I saying I'm not the person who writes the laws and lays out what people should be punished with? Was it crappy? Was it shady that he did this, that he cheated on his wife? Of course it was. But did he deserve 2 decades in prison for this, for something that he may not have done? I don't think so. And I want to talk about something else, Danny. I know our time is running short, but just to talk about really quickly the fact that baby Connor's body was found separately than Lacey's. I know we don't want to get too graphic for our viewers and everything, but the baby was found with a piece of electrical tape taped onto the ear and also a noose-like object around his neck and his chest.
I know, that is so weird, man. That almost makes me think it's like cult-like.
It does sound very, very, very cult-like, and it also just sounds very like just abnormal. And how can I don't even know how the prosecution or anybody would have explained that or tried to give information on a detailed description of what that was, how that transpired.
Yeah, I don't know, and they don't even like they said they don't even know how she died, right?
They
Now,
not have a cause of death officially.
Listen, like I said, guys, and I'm just throwing this out there. I don't want to be graphic, but the body deteriorates quick in water. It bloats, it blows up. Connor could have came out of her stomach. You don't know. You're You're in an ocean, right? You're getting wrapped around the sea. It could have tangled him somewhere. That could have been stuff that came on after he was dumped.
That's
That's
true.
another thing. Am I
That's
right? It could have.
So that's one theory, yes, is that as horrible as this is, yes, we're getting graphic in the details because we're trying to get to the bottom of this crime. But just to elaborate on it, the baby was found separately from the mother. The mother was pregnant, 8 months pregnant when she disappeared. The baby was found separately, and that begs the question: was the baby separated from the mom before they were submerged in the ocean, or did the baby come out later and get debris and plastic and a plastic piece of tape stuck on the baby's ear? I don't know. But these are just very suspicious facts that I think at least the defense should be looking at, to just say, hey, like, let's talk about this. Let's analyze this. Let's figure out, well, what did happen? How would my client have done this if he did this? You know,
Yeah.
and what?
And Pete, did you watch the new documentary? If you didn't watch it, it's good. It's really good.
Not seen the new one. I'm going. That's one of the. Yeah, I was watching a lot of the older stuff as well as some of the current YouTube broadcasts and programs. But I will check out the new documentary this week.
His sister-in-law is in the new documentary, and his sister-in-law, 100%, she believes he's not guilty.
Yeah,
I mean, like, she doesn't just think he was wrongly convicted because there was a lack of evidence. She thinks this man is not guilty.
yeah,
Honestly.
yeah.
If you watch the document, like, guys, believe me, I don't think he's not guilty. I 100% think he's guilty. I just think there's a difference, like I said, between innocent and not guilty. Okay? And he's not innocent, but he's not guilty.
Yeah. So, Danny, what do you think, in your opinion, as a former police officer investigator, what do you think happened? I mean, was it on the boat? Do you think he rented the van? Do you think? I mean, what would be your best guess based on what we have? Because we don't have a lot to go on.
Listen, Pete, I don't like that the dog was left loose and just running out there. The
That's weird.
only thing I could think of, he somehow gets her in his truck or his van without anybody seeing her, okay? Puts her in there, lets the dog go out so he could say she went missing on a dog walk. Like, he put the dog out there knowing she probably walks the dog every morning. Now the neighbors are going to see the dog roaming. So did he set up an alibi? I would look at him setting up an alibi with the dog. And he killed her, put her in his truck, and drove her to the lake. But he killed her somewhere in that house. My guess would be he's not going to kill her on the sidewalk. He killed her in that house. But
Okay.
I'm shocked they didn't find how do you not find a crime scene?
Yeah, nothing. And of course, they're making allegations that he could have suffocated her. He could have done something that was not messy at all. But however, when she was found later, it's also been highly speculated that she was decapitated before she was submerged. And so there had to have been a massive amount of blood evidence somewhere. Someone else in the comments just mentioned earlier, was it the boat? You know, I'm sure they tore that boat apart looking for evidence, right, Danny?
Yes. Yeah. They tore that boat was probably scoured from beginning to end. But I'm going to say this to you guys, too. I know I'm sticking up for him a lot, but DNA and everything has came a long way since then.
Yeah.
Like, would this case have been different nowadays?
Oh,
maybe.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Who knows? Maybe. But do I think that blood should be tested on that mattress? Yes, because that could clear the guy. That could clear this man.
Yeah, and you know, it's definitely interesting to watch, because who knows, Danny, how many people there are that are in the system right now that might be locked up, that might not be getting any publicity whatsoever, that might be there who are innocent. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think of, isn't it?
Yes, totally crazy.
Wow.
Honestly, it's insane. Because do I think there's a lot of people convicted that are innocent? No, I don't. Like, I would think the percentage is very, very low of people. Like, if you get arrested, there's a good chance you did it. Okay, I mean, let's be honest, there's a good chance. But could it happen? Sure. Is there corrupt cops? Sure. You know what I mean? Is there corrupt DAs? Sure. You know what I mean? So could it happen? Yeah. I don't think anybody planted evidence on this guy. I just think there's not enough evidence against him.
Yeah. Yeah, Danny, and everything that just is surrounding the case, all the external facts, all the other possibilities. To me, there's a lot of circumstantial evidence to suggest that maybe it wasn't him. there's a lot, there's, or not necessarily evidence, I guess, but circumstantial facts out there that are just, that may not pertain to this case. However, they might, like the burglary across the street. I believe they caught 2 men for that burglary, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And they were interrogated briefly.
Yes, they caught the men and
That's
they
it.
interrogated them. Yes, and that was it.
And
Yep.
they're cleared. They cleared them quickly. I believe.
And listen, we got 5 minutes here, guys. Let me just explain this to you. Let me tell you this is how I would explain it to you, Pete. Okay? We have Pete. By the way, we have this pregnant girl missing. Okay? And the day she went missing, a neighbor found her dog running around without her with its leash still on. And the neighbor put the dog in the backyard. Oh, and by the way, Pete, there was a burglary right across the street. Pete, that is reasonable doubt to me. I'm sorry, that is reasonable doubt. Unless you have hard evidence that this man killed her, that's reasonable doubt. I'm sorry, that's reasonable doubt to me.
Yeah, I think the reasonable doubt is very strong there. And I wonder what the percentage was of juries, like how many females to how many males on that jury. Because like you said, probably all the females were instantly like, oh, he cheated. Oh, no, he's guilty. Right? I mean, that's a pretty good guess. You said it earlier. I know you're like maybe halfway joking, but you're halfway serious at least.
I'm 90% serious that girls would convict somebody for cheating. They would convict them for murder for just cheating.
Yeah.
I'm convinced.
And it's crazy because that's something that obviously, that's trying to serve with a lot of people. And I completely get it. I understand that mentality. However, is there a guilty person running around free right now? Now, was this a serial event? Was there multiple? Was Lacey one of a type that fit the type of a certain criminal who was going around doing this for 3 years, who had 8 other victims that we know of in the greater Modesto area?
Right. Could there be a serial killer?
Yeah.
Of pregnant women?
Yeah, I don't know. However, it is suspicious that between 99 and 03, those 7 other young ladies who were all pregnant were all abducted in that area. That to me is suspicious.
Yeah, and listen, I Googled it.
Okay.
The jury was split, 6 men, 6 women.
Okay, interesting. Wow.
That is interesting. 6 men, 6 women.
I saw some testimony after the conviction from a couple of the male jurors. I only saw like maybe 2 or 3 of them. And pretty much they all said the same thing. They said, if Scott had showed any kind of remorse or any kind of emotion or even spoken up for himself during the trial, maybe I would have said otherwise. But he was just so passive and he was so unemotional that I decided to convict him. And to me, that's not a good enough reason for me personally.
I know. I think he comes off, and we got 3 minutes there, but I think he comes off arrogant. I think if you look at the guy, he's like, look at me, all the women like me. Like he's an arrogant type of dude. So instantly he gives off them vibes that he's a D-bag. Honestly, let's be honest. So women probably didn't like him right off because they've seen them types of dudes before. And I'm just being honest. That's how he comes off,
I will say, I felt like Dean Cain portrayed him very well in that Perfect Husband movie. And
yeah, I might watch that tonight.
Yeah, he did a good job of just giving an unbiased performance of trying to do his best version of Scott. But you're right, Scott does kind of come off a little bit that way. But however, is that enough to convict him? I guess it was back in 2004 or 2003. But is it enough now for a retrial? I guess we'll see soon. If we have.
Yeah, I would say no. But you know what? Now that we're almost done, and thank you guys. We had a solid number of people in YouTube the whole time. Nobody was leaving. Thank you guys. And I appreciate you. Now, next week, I'm going to put it out there. What case do you want? I think we should go Gabby Petito or something. Give me another case and we'll let everybody choose. What else could we do? And we have a serial killer that wrote a book and does a documentary on a serial killer that might be a guest in the future here in March.
Yes, eventually we're going to be uncovering some older cases,
decades,
well as just a few years old. So we'll post all that in the comments. We'll let the people vote on the next episode.
Okay, so we got Gabby Petito, DB Cooper. Do you have anyone? I'm trying to think off the top of my head. You got any? I can't even think of one.
I really think at some point we should do the Menendez case.
Oh, all right. How about we do that? Menendez and Gabby Petito. I'll put it up and we'll see. We'll let them pick.
Perfect. Let's do it.
All right, but hey, thanks everybody. We'll be back next Thursday, 6 p.m. And listen, This is going to be the #1 true crime podcast. You can guarantee it. Listen, me and Pete won't stop till it is. And share anything. Anything you want to share with us, we'll do a case on it. We'll do a podcast on it.
That's right. Let's get to the truth, brother. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We'll see y'all next week.
All right. See you guys.